The Women's Six Nations is going on. I don't know if you follow that, but just and then the men's one finished last month. And you were saying that you were in touch with the games, i.e. watching practically most of them. What was it that caught you in terms of this particular Six Nations and then the winners being France as well
I think
and England's disappointment?
this Six Nations took me a bit by surprise. I think as a kid growing up, I always sort of dipped my toe. I played rugby at school, but I always dipped my toe into it and sort of watching sort of World Cups and Six Nations and stuff. But
Mhm.
the score lines were never as big as what they were in this Six Nations from my memory of it. I think it used to be the game used to be a lot slower and taking more
Right.
penalties, and whereas now it just feels. I think to me now football and rugby have almost completely switched in terms of football always used to be the quick, free-flowing game, and rugby was set pieces and scrums and line-outs. Whereas to me now football can be hard to watch, in my opinion.
Yep.
And that always used to be rugby, whereas now I watch rugby and I just think it's a lot more free-flowing, ball in hand, trying to score tries, even I watched a bit of club rugby. I watched Northampton Saints, their last two games, and they've been unbelievably entertaining to watch. So I think the two games have just seemed to switch, and I think they just seem a lot less fearful of making a mistake than what you do watching football, I think, nowadays.
Do you think on that is probably why there was some big scores, but also a lot of upsets in the Six Nations? Because, like we say, well, when me and you spoke previously, England were the favourites to win it, and they had an ultra disappointing campaign. Literally, winning one game and losing four, and then Wales are always usually in the mix, and again they finished bottom of the table.
Yeah, I think, but again, I think it showed where England were in terms of their coaching. I think they were, in my opinion, the most boring team to watch. Not just because they were
Right.
losing games, but just because it was a lot of box kicking, a lot of, safe plays, if you like. Whereas Scotland, for example, when they beat France and they were nearly 40 points up in the first half or early in the second half, because they just absolutely blew them away in terms of just the pace they played at. And I think that's probably why there were so many upsets, because I think teams caught some of the teams off guard because of the pace they were playing at and the expression they played with. Whereas England were just very methodical, so they could almost contain them. Teams could contain them a bit better. And even Wales, even though, I mean, they've been poor for the last couple of years, to be fair, but even going forward, attacking wise, they scored some really good, entertaining tries.
Yeah.
And it was only sort of the last game where England played France, and they kind of took the shackles off and nearly beat them because they actually wanted to express themselves. And I think any sports fan watching sport, I think you just want to see top athletes express themselves. That's what's entertaining.
Yeah.
So I think that's what was good about the Six Nations, was just you just watching athletes at their best just have free reign to create and do what they do best, really.
Yeah, no, definitely. Because I think England probably, with the way they finished off, the way they started off the Six Nations, because they battered Wales their first game was 48-6 or something like that, and then just it's crazy. They lost every other game, but their points differential was still plus.
Wales, yeah.
Yeah, because of the Wales game. But again, like you said, with the France game, final game for them, there's no expectations because they knew they couldn't win. They went for it, even though they still lost that game, finished 48-46 or something like
a
that.
point or two, yeah.
Crazy high scoring. And we did see, like you said, because teams were more expressive and teams were catching other teams off guard, we did see those kind of scoring games where teams will either just blow out a team or there'll just be some high scoring games from both teams on that front. So yes, that is because I thought I was saying to you, oh, it was probably a surprise that France won it, but you were saying beforehand that with England they were one of the
Yeah,
ones too.
I think um, Northern Hemisphere teams. I think France is the best. I think, and would be general opinion. I think for the World Cup, you're probably edging towards South Africa, but I think in terms of Northern Hemisphere, I think you're probably going France are probably a step above everyone else.
You're right.
But then England had a great year. Like I was saying, I don't know. I think it was unbeaten or won their last 10 or something before the Six Nations. So again,
That's why I was surprised by their
yeah,
campaign because there was a lot of confidence going in because of how they played. Obviously, how Itoji's been since he's been captain.
yeah,
Because obviously, was it last year when he led the? Is it the Lions, if I'm not
yeah,
mistaken?
yeah, yeah,
And then, so a lot of that people thought would channel into the England squad, which effectively it did for a period of time when they were unbeaten for a while.
yeah. So I think there was a lot of hope in England for them to do well, but it was always going to be England France that were going to have that crescendo at the end against each other in Paris, but it just didn't work out that way. Um,
That game was meant to be the game for the Marvels for the
and
championship.
it wasn't because it would have been. Imagine that game if it was for the Six Nations and you had a penalty in the last minute to win would have.
Yeah, given how the game went and then the score as well,
So
that would have been insane. It's basically like a I'm trying to think of a high scoring cup final or Champions League final where teams are just
yeah, it's a shame, but I think is it World Cup? No, World Cup's next year. I think isn't it? Rugby World Cup next year
I feel like
or
it's next year.
winter was it? Yeah, so
Let me check. I feel like it's next year. Yeah, it's in Australia.
yeah, so
27. Jeez, fair play. Oh, boy, the rugby. Oh.